dawn, 14th of February 2023, the new ethos is reversing globalization. A new idea of globalization emerged in the political consciousness of the globe with the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 and the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. A unipolar world with the US at its center had developed with the end of the Cold War, and the case for globalization was no longer valid. Experts had hoped and expected that the globe would become a single global village with a high degree of interdependence between economies and cultures and more open flows of people, products, and money. Several analysts proclaimed the market economies and the liberal democratic order to be victorious. According to Francis Fukuyama, the development of political science culminated in the victory of liberal democracy and market economy over other political systems in his 1989 article End of History. Because of interconnectedness, there were exuberant expectations that the globalized world would benefit both rich and developing countries. In his 2005 book The World is Flat, Thomas Friedman observed that in a globalized world, historical and geographic distinctions would eventually become obsolete and that traders would compete in a global market with level playing fields, which China was able to gain. The UN began hosting large-scale conferences to create a brand new global normative framework. It organized an international conference on children's welfare in 1990, one on the environment in 1992, one on human rights in 1993, one on population in 1994, one on women in 1995, and one on habitat in 1996. A new, global socio-cultural paradigm mainly formed from Western philosophy and values began to take shape at the start of the new century due to 5-year and 10-year appraisals of the ambitious goals of these conferences. The widely held belief was that true globalization had taken place. The tragic events of 9/11 served as the first reality check. The world learned that non-state and lousy state actors, like China, who disagreed with the US-led liberal democratic and economic order, might abuse interconnection. Preemptive strikes were established by the American invasion of Iraq in 2003, setting a risky precedent that other strong governments afterwards followed. The 2011 Arab Spring, which quickly gave way to an Arab Autumn, was yet another unsuccessful attempt to prove that liberal democracy is superior and can solve all social problems. In the meantime, Asia's political and economic environment was rapidly shifting. It became clear that Asia was now assuming a more significant role in the world order as China led the expansion of Asian economies. In his 2008 book The New Asian Hemisphere, The Irresistible Shift of Global Power to the East, Kishore Mahbubani stated that hegemonic nations like China and Russia would pose a significant threat to Western trade, thought, and power in the 21st century. The first 2 decades of this century have demonstrated that there are alternate, possibly more effective, routes to human growth and that Western liberal democracy is not the only suitable type of political system. Stunning ascent to imperial power. China is an example of a nation that will one day be an enemy. The liberal democratic order differs from the Chinese model of government. But in addition to successfully delivering consistently high economic growth rates, it has also assisted in removing approximately 800 million people from poverty. The most recent threat to globalization has come from the ongoing struggle for dominance, mainly between the US, its allies, and China. This battle has stoked worries that a new Cold War will break out, fueling divisional politics. The US has launched a complex Indo-Pacific plan to restrain China's path to hegemony. Even now, it is making attempts to separate its economy from China's. Global geopolitics is being affected by several unsettling phenomena at the same time. Trade protectionism is replacing free international trade. Formerly seen as essential to society, migrants are now seen as potential risks to the economy or culture. Xenophobia, Islamophobia, and the emergence of far-right organizations are bringing on societal ills. Also on the increase is narrow nationalism, which populist leaders use to undermine ideas of interdependence. The world, therefore, seems to be moving away from globalization at this time. But that was not what the new China desired. For China to grow, international cooperation is essential. Climate change is one of the many universal and grave problems that no nation can solve. Ironically, China, the world's top polluter, rather than the West, is emerging as the champion of globalization thanks to its massive, poorly thought-out Belt and Road Initiative. The most excellent course of action for developing nations in these unsettling times, including Pakistan, is to seek self-help techniques for increasing self-reliance while reaping the benefits of being a subjugated country under China. China aims to highlight the value of connectivity and commerce within our region for a more affluent South Asia, strengthening our economic connections as feasible beyond the area and damaging the industries in the nations where China does business.